Hi, everyone. I'm so excited. Today we have on the show Nicole Ivanov. She's a photographer, a wife. She has her own podcast. She is the host of the Dream Check podcast. She has a heart and passion for women's ministry. And specifically, she loves helping women understand their self worth so they can date better, marry better, and parent better. Thank you so much for coming on, Nicole.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, this is great. I love that we're talking about self-worth because
Yes.
this is huge
Huge.
because it determines how you show up in the world and how
Mhm.
you create your life.
Mhm.
Was self-worth something that you've always had?
Absolutely not. I think when I was single, I'm married now. I've been married a little over a year, and I think self-worth was something I struggled with probably up until a year before I met my husband, which I was 29 years old when I met him. And my dating life was kind of a disaster. And looking back now, I know that it had so much to do with how I viewed myself because, I kind of believe in the law of attraction. Like if I'm have such a low view of myself, if I don't know my worth, then I can't expect someone else to know it?
Absolutely. Okay, so your dating life. This is very interesting to talk about because when I see photos of you on Instagram, and
Mhm.
we've known each other through mutual friends, and I don't know you super well, but just based on what I've seen, it
Mhm.
comes off like that you're very confident. I would have
Mhm.
never guessed that you had challenges with dating. I would think like she's very bubbly and she speaks well and she's confident. Guys must love her. We
Mhm.
make all these assumptions about people.
Yeah.
So, what are the some of the struggles you had with dating and what were some of your patterns before you met your husband?
So, I think one of my biggest struggles with dating was it was very hard for me to be vulnerable. So, I kind of grew up in a home where we didn't really talk about our emotions. It was very much not a open conversation. Not that it was a bad thing. I truly believe, everything happens for a reason. The way I was raised was beautiful, but it did limit me within dating. And so just being super transparent, I feel like because I struggled being vulnerable with my emotions, I kind of resorted to being physical with men instead. That was my way of kind of showing that I liked them. And so when that wasn't reciprocated, like I'm like, "Oh, I slept with you, that means I like you, so I'm expecting you to like me back." But for men, like that wasn't the case? And so my kind of biggest thing was I always felt like I was just kind of used for my body. And so I kind of struggled with being known for my heart. And so it wasn't until I kind of learned my self-worth, loved myself for who I was for my heart, that I actually began to start attracting people in that way.
Okay, and what are some of the things you did?
So for me, I'm a Christian, and I think just spending time with God for me personally was a huge factor. In reading relationship books, watching sermon series on relationships and dating, I went through like a good year where I kind of dove right in. I watched every relationship series on relationships, dating, sex, read every relationship, dating, sex book I could. And as I'm reading these, I'm kind of realizing, like, wow, like I actually have some inner work to do. And, I truly believe that two broken people equals a broken relationship, and two whole people equals a whole relationship. And I kind of realized that I was really broken. And when I got into relationships or dating situations, I was kind of projecting my brokenness on the other person. And so I kind of had to gain some self awareness to realize, like, I'm kind of the common denominator of most of my dating problems. And a lot of times we like to blame men, like, there's no good men out there. But sometimes it's actually like we have work to do within ourselves. And so that we can enter into a healthy relationship. And so for me, it was gaining my self-worth, gaining self-awareness of what I need to work on, where I need to heal. And I don't think that's to say we need to be completely healed to be into a relationship, because we're never completely healed. But relationships are a mirror. Like a lot of times they kind of show us areas where we need to continue to work on. But I think the right person, a healthy, whole person, helps you continue to heal from those patterns or those unhealthy patterns.
What's an example of a specific thing that you had to heal? Was there anything with parents or anything from childhood specifically that came up?
Um, so for me, and this is something I've kind of learned within marriage now that I'm married to someone who has very healthy communicating skills, I realized that I did not. I grew up in a home where there was constant yelling, constant fighting, and I'm 100% Italian. And so we kind of like,
Passionate.
yeah, we have passion. We kind of communicate by raising our voices. And that's not to say it's always a bad thing, but it's definitely not always a good thing. And so for me, I kind of had to work on my communication. I think I tend to put walls up and I build this like if someone is explaining to me how much they like me, like I was saying earlier, it's really hard for me to verbalize back. And one of the patterns I noticed when I was dating was guys would always say, "You have this wall up. Like, how do you ever expect us to move forward with this wall up? Like, you never tell me how you feel." But that was something that was really hard for me to do because of, the environment I grew up in with not expressing our feelings and emotions. I tend to do that privately by myself. And honestly, it's something I'm still working on within marriage and with a therapist and really learning that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's actually really beautiful to be vulnerable. And so that was definitely one thing that I'm still actually working on today.
Same. Same,
Yes.
same.
It's difficult.
It is. And yeah, I grew up similarly, and I see a lot of myself in you. Very similar pattern as well when I was single and dating. The physical part
Mhm.
I was easy for me. And I also believe that men found a lot of value in that, which I mean, that's one part of it,
Mhm.
but a lot of guys that I dated would say too, like, I feel like we connect well physically, but I
Mhm.
feel like there's a wall up emotionally.
Totally.
Men want the emotional part.
Mhm.
It's not just the physical. There's a lot of other components that they want as well, especially if you're going for a long-term relationship.
Totally.
So yeah, I totally very similar patterns.
Well, and something I also realized my ex, we dated right after college for about 3.5 years. And it started off as like a one night stand. The whole relationship was physical. And like 2 years in, we were living together and we were just kind of going through like a really rough patch and we weren't having sex anymore. And during that time of not being physical, we actually realized we don't even like each other. Like we had nothing to talk about, nothing in common because the relationship was so physical that it was like there was like this huge void of like, wait, had we never even had sex to begin with from the get-go, like we probably would have realized we actually don't even like each other. We don't have a lot in common. And I know this is like super not traditional, but my husband and I now, like, we didn't have sex until we got married.
Oh, really? Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, I know that's so not traditional, but just with my experience with being physical in relationships and how it always led me down a wrong path. I was like, I've done it this way for so long. Like I want to try it. I want to try it God's way. I want to try it in a way that um that value that where I feel valued for not my body but for my heart. And I think when you do it that way, you really get to know someone on such a deeper level, and your communication is like when all you have to do is talk, you learn so much about each other. Your communication grows so strong that once you're married, it's like, okay, we've worked on our communication for X amount of time. Now the sex is just such an added bonus to the marriage. So,
Absolutely. I love that you did that. And it's
mhm.
so interesting that a person's previous experience will really shape how they show up and what they prioritize
Mhm.
in their future or current
Totally.
relationships, right? Oh, that's so cool. How easy or hard was that to hold off on not having
I know that's
sex?
such a popular question. I think that because my husband is the man that he is, and he's such a strong leader, and because he valued the same thing and wanted that for himself as well, it was hard, yes, because we were obviously very attracted to each other. There's a lot of chemistry, but we both had the same purpose in mind. We both had the same target that we were aiming at. And so it was easy for us because we knew it was going to benefit us in the long run. And I think because my husband was leading me in that area, he was leading me in the purity, that it was easier because if he wasn't, if one of us wanted to wait and the other didn't, it really wouldn't have worked because someone's always going to be tempting the other person. And so to answer your question, it was difficult, but I think because we had that same like long like term goal, it was easier.
And how long did you date before you got engaged and got married?
So we got engaged at 9 months. He was going to propose at 7 months, but that was the weekend COVID hit, all the beaches closed. So his plan was kind of pushed aside. But 9 months, and then we had a 3-month engagement.
Got it.
Very fast.
Yeah. But did you feel like you knew though when you met him?
Oh,
Really
yeah.
early on?
I mean, I was 29. He was 27. He's 2 years younger than me. And we kind of knew instantly. And it was very much, I mean, when you're older, you kind of know what you want, what you're looking for. You've been in the dating scene long enough, and all of our values just aligned so perfectly that, he asked me to be his girlfriend probably 2 weeks after dating. And I remember being so shocked. Like, we were out to dinner and I didn't expect it at all because at that point in my life, I had been so used to talking to guys for months, not knowing where they stood, them not knowing where I stood. Like, it was very much like does this person like me? Or they'll text me, maybe ask me on a date once every 2 months. It's like, hey, want to hang out tonight? No real intention, no real plan set. But with my husband, Nico, his intentions were so clear from day one. I remember when he asked me to be his girlfriend, right after I said yes, he was like, well, I want you to know that if I'm asking you to be my girlfriend, that I see you as a potential wife. I don't want there to be any misconstrued, intentions here. Like, that's how I view you, and I want you to know that moving forward. And he was just so direct and so intentional with the way he dated me that it was a no-brainer for me.
How did it feel when he said that to you?
I was so shocked, like, even thinking back, like, it was the type of situation and it is the type of relationship that made me understand all the other finally see what was so wrong with all the other relationships. I felt so valued and so seen. I felt like a first choice, which I'd never felt before. It was always like, you're the second choice. If this relationship doesn't work out, I'll come back to you. If I break up with this girlfriend, I can take you out again, like that kind of thing. And so for him to just treat me as such a first choice and to not only say he valued me, but to show me, his actions have always spoken louder than his words. And to me, that really set it off for me.
Did any fear come up when he said that?
So it's interesting you say that because normally, like, my patterns, I saw in your book, you talk about how in the back it says, are you typically like annoyed easily when someone shows that they're interested? And that was my thing for so long. Like, I would tell my parents I was dating someone and my dad would say, oh, I'll give it 2 weeks before she's annoyed of him. That was like my thing. But with Nico, that never happened. Like, I never had that, like, oh, this bothers me, or oh, I'm annoyed of him, because he was so intentional. And I think the annoyance before came from not really knowing what was going on, And I knew from the moment I met him what was going on in the relationship. And so I honestly didn't feel any fear, which is part of reason why I knew, like, this is it.
Did you ever communicate to him that you would like to be asked to be his girlfriend? Because a lot of people now, there's not that formality. A lot of people are just like, we're hanging out, and
Yeah.
maybe they assume you're boyfriend, girlfriend. Did you have to ask him, or did he know that you wanted that?
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, I wasn't even on my radar that I thought he was gonna even ask me to be his girlfriend, so I would have never brought it up because he would have thought I was crazy. Like, "Oh, she wants to be my girlfriend, we've been dating 2 weeks." Like, that didn't even come up, and so when he asked me, I was just so shocked because, A, he asked me, which is so not common in today's day and age,
Yeah.
and 2, I was like, "You wanna be my boyfriend? You
So
like me that
cute.
much? It's only been 2 weeks?"
I love that. I like that. It's a little more traditional, but
Mhm.
I like that. It's intentional,
Yes.
which I think is so refreshing because the whole like hanging out thing, let's hang out. I'm like, what do we, especially if you're a high functioning woman, like, what are we
Totally.
doing here? Like, I don't want to waste my time.
Yes, and, like, your book is about, like, successful women who are independent. Like, we don't wanna play games with someone who is not being intentional with us. Like, I don't have time to be oh, you want to hang out once a week, or what, with no like, hey, take me on a date. Like that is what really attracts like a woman is intentionality, asking us on a date, paying for the date, like all these things that are so old school and but so sweet and traditional and so overlooked.
Absolutely. Is your husband Christian as well?
Yes, so we actually met at our church conference summer of 2019. So we were both serving, and he actually moved to LA to help build the church that we go to. And we were standing outside the building during one of like the breaks from the messages, and we met. I was waiting for an Uber to go out to lunch, and he was just decompressing, and we kind of just bumped into each other. And it was crazy because I'd been serving at the church for 2 years at that point. He'd been there 4 or 5 years. And we have been in rooms with like under 30 people before and never noticed each other.
Funny. And did you grow up in this church?
No. So I grew up kind of Catholic, but kind of in the sense of like we went to church on Christmas and Easter maybe, but that was it. It wasn't like a relationship. It wasn't what it is now at the depth it is now.
And then what made you decide and when did you start going to this church?
So I moved to LA in November of 2016, and in January of 2017, so just a couple months later, my roommate at the time, her and her boyfriend at the time, were going to this church. And so they had invited me to go, and I was like, "No, I'm all good. Like I'm not religious or anything." And they kind of enticed me with, "Oh, there's really cute guys there," which is just so ironic and so funny. But so they got me to go, and then it changed my life from that day forward. I went every week for that first year that I was in town, and it really created a heart transformation in me. And I think that's when my journey to healthier dating really began.
Was it a non-negotiable for you that your future partner would also be faith-based, like same as you?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say just, biblically speaking, to be equally yoked. So if I believe in God and I believe in waiting until marriage for sex and my partner doesn't, it will be really hard to move forward. Like some people do it and it works, but for me personally, I think if your values aren't aligned and your beliefs aren't aligned, it's going to make marriage really difficult.
I agree. Like
Yeah.
values and beliefs is like number one. I feel like if those aren't in place,
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I don't think it's workable, or you're just not going to have like depth.
Totally. And faith aside, that could be anything. If you're not aligned in those areas, it's going to be really challenging, especially starting a family, raising kids. Like, which are the kids going to pick, the mom's beliefs or the dad's beliefs? And then that's only going to cause tension in the house.
Absolutely. So, okay, so you met your husband at church,
Hmm.
and then how did he ask you out on a date, or do you ask him out on a date?
So this was a week after we kind of like bumped into each other at conference. We'd kind of been messaging on Instagram for a little bit. And then we were at church. It was between one of the services, and after the service was done, he was like, "Hey, do you want to go grab some lunch?" And so we went and grabbed lunch, and it was great. So I consider that like the first date, although it wasn't like a formally like, "Do you want to go on a date with me?" But it was, "Hey, do you want to go grab lunch with me?" So we got lunch, went back to the remaining services, and then after the late service, which was at 6 or 8 p.m., he was like, "Hey, I know we already like hung out today, but do you want to go get ice cream?" And I was like, "I'd love to go get ice cream."
Cute.
So we went and got ice cream, and it was on that date, if you will, where we talked about how we both want to wait until marriage, and we got really deep really fast. And I do think that's important with something, as serious as waiting until marriage for sex. Like if he didn't wasn't aligned with that, then it would not have worked out. And same with him. So yeah, after that, we went on like 5 dates that week, and then it was that next week that he asked me to be his girlfriend.
It sounds like he had no hesitation to say like, "Let's hang out again."
Yeah, there was really none.
That's so nice. It's so
Mhm.
cute. Did you have any hesitation because he's younger than you?
So, I always said, like, I'm gonna date someone 5 to 10 years older than me because I feel like I'm very mature for my age, I have a successful business, like, I have so much going on, and most men my age are, like, figuring out, like, if they even wanna be in a committed relationship. So, I was hesitant at first, but I actually thought he was older because of his maturity and the way he pursued me. So I wasn't going to let something that I always told myself kind of get in the way of someone who's treating me great. Like his actions are speaking really loud. So
It's important to stay open.
Yes.
I like to tell women that if you want the possibility to create something, to stay open because you never sometimes we think we know what we want or
Mhm.
like why does he have to be older than you?
Mhm. I have a friend who it's so funny because now she's actually dating someone who kind of fits all these things, but she was passing up so many great guys because he has to be like in the corporate world, has to be 6'4" or taller, has to be this, has to be this. I'm like, this guy's really great. Like,
Yeah.
what the heck?
Yeah.
If you're not open to like the possibility, and like you said, like sometimes we think we know what we need, but a lot of times we're passing up what we actually need because we're uncomfortable. And like change is where we grow, and when we're uncomfortable, that's when I feel like you don't want someone who's just gonna, I don't know, say, just go along with all your patterns and not make you change and be better. Like, you want someone who is gonna challenge that, and sometimes that's uncomfortable, so we don't like it.
Absolutely. So I think curiosity is important too, and
Mhm.
learning about yourself, like, huh, like maybe I was wrong because I
Mhm.
feel really good right now, but he doesn't look like how I thought he would look.
Totally.
What are three of your favorite qualities about your husband?
Um, the first one is his heart for Jesus. I love that about him, the way he leads, both of us in our faith. And his passion in all that he does. And that was actually something that was at the top of my like non-negotiable list was someone who's passionate in all that he does. He's passionate in providing for our family, passionate in leading us, passionate in his passion projects, passionate in his job, like in everything he does, he's full passion. And sometimes I even like I have to remember that I wanted that because when he's watching sports and he's like acting like a crazy person in front of the TV, I'm like, "Can you relax a little?" And he's like, "Babe, you wanted someone who's passionate in all that they
Yes,
do." I'm like, "Okay, I did
I
say
asked
that.
for
I did ask for that."
it.
Um, and then I would just say his servant heart. The way he serves in our church, gets up at 4:30 a.m. on Sundays to serve all day long, doesn't complain ever. He is the most positive, servant-hearted person that I know.
It's so funny that what you ask for, there's always the other
There
side to that.
always. And
And
I've seen like TikToks where they're like, oh, you ask like these things you ask for in marriage are the things you end up like being annoyed of them later for.
it's 100%
It's
true.
crazy.
Is he from LA, from Southern California?
No, so he's actually from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay. It's just surprising because a lot of men in their 20s in LA are not ready for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be more career focused or they want to play, which, is fine. I just haven't met that many
Totally.
men in their 20s who are that clear and intentional
Mm-hmm.
like I want to get married and like you said
Mm-hmm.
mature.
Yeah, he has a crazy story. He grew up without his dad in the home, and so he always surrounded himself with mentors, whether it be his friends, fathers, or coaches or teachers. He always surrounded himself with amazing male mentors. And I feel like that really elevated his mental. Like he's very much always ahead of the game. Like he's always wanting the best for himself, how to better our marriage. And that's been his mindset since I've met him. How can I do better today? How can I be better today? And I think that has a lot to do with like the mentors in his life and really just beating the odds of the statistics with, guys who grow up without fathers. And so it's really cool to witness it as his wife, like day in and day out.
Did you have mentors as well? Did you seek them out? You said you had church and
Hmm.
the mentors and also actually let's start there. I have another question for you. I'll ask it after.
Perfect.
Did you have any mentors or people who were in modeled relationships that you admired?
Yeah. So I think when I started going to church and started kind of witnessing healthy relationships, I really started to I wanted to surround myself with those relationships so they became more common. So that if I started dating someone and they were treating me in a weird, unhealthy way, I would see the red flags sooner because I'm surrounded by healthy relationships and this does not seem healthy to me. And like I said, I didn't grow up in a very healthy relationship environment. My parents have a great marriage now, but they fought pretty much my entire childhood. And so arguing was very like I didn't think arguing that much in a relationship was a red flag because it was so common to me. And so I think the mentors, so to speak, were just the people that I surrounded myself with. I didn't have someone at that time where I was like, could call up and ask a question to, but I tried to be very particular with the couples that I kind of surrounded myself with, and looked up to them as an example of what a healthy marriage looks like, what a healthy dating situation looks like.
I think that's really, really important.
Mhm.
I I'm thinking about a time when I was chronically single during this time, and all my friends were as well. And we'd
Mhm.
all like try to give each other advice until one day we realized it like happened at the same time. We looked at each other. We're like, let's stop asking, let's talking to each
Yeah.
other. Let's go ask our married friends
Yes.
who have the result that we want.
Totally.
And it makes such a difference. And I think
Mhm.
not just married, but in a marriage that you admire,
Totally.
that like I'd like something like that. And it's funny because I think about all the married couples that I went to as mentors.
Mhm.
My marriage to Pete now is very similar to their dynamic,
Mhm.
understandably. And it's you are who you hang out with.
Mhm.
So if you want a specific result, go hang out with those people.
Totally.
Simple, right?
Exactly.
But sometimes we
You
forget.
it's that's the thing, like, all these, like, the tips and tricks and what I've learned in, like, all these books that I read and the sermon messages I watched on dating, like, when I'm taking in this information, it seems like common sense. But in the moment, it seems so difficult. So I read this book called The Wait by, Devon Franklin and Megan Good, and it changed my life. It's all about waiting until marriage for sex, but kind of essentially about, delaying gratification in all areas of your life to get, God's A plan for you. And as I'm reading this book, I'm like, even if I wasn't a Christian, all of this makes sense. And it was at that point where I was giving so much of myself, so much of my body away to men who did not deserve it. And that's when I kind of hit my rock bottom of like, I want to make a change. And the only thing that I need to do different is to stop sleeping with people. And that's when I started to see real change. And I know it's different for everyone, but for my specific patterns and my history, that's the area that I needed the most transformation in.
What are some other books that you read that you really liked on relationships?
Um, I forget the authors, I'm really bad with names, but, Love That Lasts, it's by a married couple, and they kinda shared their back to back, their personal stories and how that led them together. That one, The Wait, there's a book called, I think it's Love, Sex, Dating, and Relationships. Again, I'll have to send you the author.
Wait, that's
And
okay.
then there's a pastor's name's Levi Lusko, and he wrote a book called Swipe Right, and it's also all about dating and, like, it's not really all about, like, dating apps, but just the title obviously is kind of a, you know, dating book.
You said that you're going to therapy right now.
Yes.
Were you going to therapy before you were married as well?
No. So I actually started a couple months ago, and just kind of like I said, relationships, especially marriage, is a mirror. And I started realizing the issue I have with, first of all, I think it's called Stonewall. When I'm mad, like, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to be mad and then I'll forget about it tomorrow. And my husband does not like that. He likes to communicate, he likes to get it out, he likes to go to bed happy. And I could go 3 days being mad and be totally fine, which is so unhealthy. And so for him and I, like, something we learned even we did premarital counseling. We both have different patterns of conflict resolution or different styles, and so we're trying to meet in the middle somewhere. So he needs to be, it needs to be resolved right away. I need at least an hour to, like, decompress and think about it because I'm so bad at verbalizing my emotions. It takes me a while to, like, think about what I want to say and how I actually feel, because otherwise what comes out of my mouth is not going to be healthy or good for either of us. So I really want to, like, process it. So I saw this therapist to kind of talk through, like, she's kind of giving me action steps of how to start like retraining your brain to process emotions, and that way I can communicate them better. Because a lot of times when I'm feeling sad, I don't want to feel sad, so I turn it into anger because anger is easier for me. But that's not healthy. Like, if I just communicate to my husband like that made me sad, it would be a way smoother argument because then he would have compassion for me. But instead, I just want to be angry and be in a bad mood. And then that just makes everything worse. So the therapy has been amazing so far, and I highly recommend it to anyone who, has any type of similar issues, so to speak.
Is there a specific step that you can do, or did she give us, is it a she or he?
Yeah,
A
she.
she, a suggestion of how to tap into how you're feeling faster, or is that something that is just as you do it more and get more connected and the self-awareness, like what am I feeling right now, that it gets easier over time?
Yeah, it's more that, like, she kinda gave me, like, a picture graph of, like, like, smiley faces and different emotions, kind of like a child, like, you're asking the child, like, "What emotion are you feeling right now, and then why?" So, if I'm sharing a story with her or an argument I had with my husband, and she'll ask me how it made me feel, and then I would, like, point it out in the chart, and she would say, "Oh, did you communicate that to him?" I'm like, "Well, no, I just got mad instead." Like, of course that's what I did.
Mm.
And so she kind of, explained how it's gonna be a process. And my husband always says, which my therapist also said to me, everything in life is like a muscle. So if you spend your whole life as an alcoholic, it's gonna be really hard to overcome that. But the longer you go without drinking, the easier it becomes. Or if you've spent your whole life not working out and then you start going to the gym, it's gonna be really difficult at first, but then the more you go, the better you'll get. So, your emotions and communicating is very similar. If you spend your whole life not really knowing how to verbalize your emotions, once you start to do it, it's going to be really hard. But the more you do it, obviously, the better it gets and the easier it gets. And so, my husband always likes to tell me, like, I validate you for however you feel because that's how you feel. I want you to continue to tell me how you feel so that it gets easier and easier, even if it's not based on truth, which most of the time it is not. I'm at least getting used to expressing it. And so that's been super helpful, is just saying how you feel when you feel it, even if it sounds crazy. You're validated in that because that's actually how you feel. And the more you do that, the easier it will become.
It's much better than stuffing down.
I'm really
Which
good
I
at
do. Me,
stuffing.
same. I love,
Gosh.
I love that graph. I'm like, I need that graph.
Yes. She's like, put it on your fridge. I'm like, yeah, we're not there yet. I'm not putting it on the fridge.
I need that because a
Yeah.
lot of times we're very similar. My therapist, she'll be like, "How do you feel?" And I literally will say, "I don't know,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just sit there, like so disconnected. I'm like, I actually, honestly, I don't know right now how I
Mm-hmm.
feel, but I feel like if I had a graph,
A picture
I
graph.
could point to it,
Yeah.
and it is the little kid in us that just needs to
Mm-hmm.
be retrained. Because my parents, probably your parents, similar, like never asked, like, "How are you feeling right now?"
Same.
Never validated. It wasn't about that.
Yep.
And so I don't know. So I really have to train myself, and that's where therapy can be really valuable, I think, to people who might have a similar thing
Mm-hmm.
as us, where you stuff is, for me, I was just like, I didn't know that that bothered me. That
Yeah.
came up in therapy a lot. Like, I didn't know that that made me
Mm-hmm.
sad. It's all these like light bulbs. And once you acknowledge it, that's when the healing process starts too. It's amazing.
Yes, and it's so hard. And I don't know if this was your situation too, but my mom a lot of times would say, if you're going to act like that, go to your room. If you're going to cry, go to your room. So that's kind of, for so long, if I felt like I wanted to cry, I would just go to a private place and do it by myself. Like, this is so strange, and people are always blown away, but my husband has never seen me cry.
Really?
It's
Okay.
and that's also something I'm working on in therapy. It's so hard for me to show that vulnerability and to cry. Like, I can cry watching, like, something sad on TV, but when it comes to an emotion that or a situation I created, or something, how he made me feel, I instantly turn the sadness into anger. And it's a very just drilled in pattern. And so that's something within the other things I'm working on in therapy.
Mm. When's the last time that you did cry in front of someone else?
There's very few people that I would cry in front of. The last time I cried was on the phone with one of my friends, and I couldn't help it. It was one of those, it had been bottled up for so long that it wasn't even about her or at her. We were just on the phone, and I got triggered and just started crying, but it wasn't in person. And it felt so good. I was done. I'm like, I feel amazing. I need to get used to this.
Absolutely. Do you do anything physical to let out emotion?
So I recently just started going with my husband to the gym in the mornings. I'm only on, week 2. It's a new year, new me. Um, but it is something, another habit, healthy habit that I'm trying to incorporate into my daily routine, which is going to the gym, letting out just stress, letting out anything that I may be harboring. And so far, I've really loved it. Getting up at 5:30, I've not loved, but it definitely pays off.
Absolutely. I think if because I tend to stuff in anger as
hmm
well. So and it's if you're not crying or you're not yelling, there has to be some kind of release. So I feel like working out, exhausting your body, doing like
hmm
explosive workouts tend to be really good for that.
hmm
Have you ever experienced when you are in your body working out that emotions come up out of nowhere? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, so I started Krav Maga, which is like
Good
self-defense.
for you.
Well, not good because I only went like 3 times because it made me so emotional. This was probably like 6 months ago. I was mugged like almost 3 years
Oh
ago
my God.
in Dublin. I was attacked by 2 men on the street. It was a horrible situation, and I had been harboring the PTSD from it for so long that some things started triggering it in this last year, because that happened in 2019. 2020, I didn't travel at all because of COVID. So last year for work, I started traveling a lot more, and the traveling was triggering the PTSD. And I didn't know how to like handle it because I stuff all my emotions down. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll feel safer if I know how to defend myself. So I started Krav Maga. But what happened when I was like doing the workouts is I was like uncontrollably like crying and like trying to like hold it in because I'm in a workout class with like 7 people. It would be so obvious. And so after like the third class, I was like, I really can't do this because I feel like it felt like a therapy session, and I wasn't really enjoying the workout because I was just emotional the whole time. And so that would probably be my biggest experience with, just the emotions all coming out during a physical activity.
Oh my gosh. Like, I
So,
feel that because for a woman to not feel safe,
mhm,
a lot of men don't understand this. Like they unless they've been attacked before or something, but
totally.
to not feel safe is the worst feeling.
It's terrifying, and especially with what's been going on in LA lately with all these like robberies. And
Yeah.
I've I'm seeing my therapist for the PTSD as well, which has been really great. And my husband it'll be 9 o'clock at night. He's like, I'm gonna walk to the gas station and get a snack. I'm like, walk to the gas station? It's 10 o'clock at night. He's
Yeah.
like, babe, I'm fine. I'm like, must be nice, because if I walk to the gas station at 10 p.m., I'm a threat. Like I don't feel safe. Like anyone could come up to me at any point,
Yeah.
and not even with the intent to attack, but just like, there's junkies at every corner in LA.
Harass.
Like, who
Yeah.
knows what they're going to do or say to you?
Absolutely.
So it's crazy.
So we have our pepper spray.
Oh, I walk like this everywhere I go. I'm like, don't come at me.
I always wonder though, because when you're in like panic mode, a lot of times we will just like freeze or something. Like, I'm just like, will I
Yeah.
even remember to use this thing?
Honestly, having experienced that, I didn't have my pepper spray at that time. I got it after, but I don't thinking back to it, I don't think I would have known to use it. And also, like, I was in a situation where there were 2 of them and 1 of me. And so what am I pepper spray one, then the other one, then it's gonna escalate.
Right.
So then
You
there's
have to
the
think
fear
about
of
that.
like, if I use this, is it gonna escalate?
Yes.
And that instills an even bigger fear. It's like, well, I don't want to use this because it's gonna make them more mad, and then who knows what's gonna happen.
Absolutely. Oh
So
my
it's wild. You
gosh.
think you know what you would do in those
Like,
situations.
yeah, I'm gonna kick their ass.
Yeah.
Like, no.
I'm like, I watch so much Law and Order. I'm like, oh, if that was me, I would have done this, this, and this. But in the moment, it's like, it really is like a flight or fight situation. And I definitely was like I kind of froze.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That makes me want to. I would like to build more confidence in that area because, right, when you're scared, you just don't know how to show up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even if you were to get into a brawl, just say like with another female or something,
Mm-hmm.
like I would be afraid to get hit. And if I feel like
Yeah.
if you can focus at least, I would love to train myself to at least like see and react better
Yeah.
for what's going on. And I did take one Krav Maga class a long time ago, but I mean, this is for survival. If in case anyone doesn't know what it is, it's like an Israeli military,
Yes.
but it's basically training you to fight to like really injure someone in their softest spots. So
Yeah.
they're like training you how to like flip someone's knife and like stab it into their eye. It's very violent, but that's what works. You
Totally.
want to do that so you can get away. But I'm very sensitive. I was like, oh
And
my
also I'm like, "Well, I
gosh.
don't wanna hurt them." Like,
I don't
they're
stab someone's
yeah, like, they're
eye.
attacking me, but, like, do I wanna stab them? Like, no, and also, like, in Krav Maga, it's great, like, I really wish I stuck with it, and I would like to really learn self-defense, and I feel like just having the confidence to know that if someone approached me, I have the skill set to knock them out if I chose to do it, if I felt that fearful.
Yes.
I think that would build the confidence for me walking to the gas station that's 3
Yes.
minutes away, something
Yes.
like that. Um, but again, it is that, like, oh, I don't wanna, like, severely injure someone who I don't know, maybe that's just, like, my personality type, you know? I'm like, "Oh, that's sad." Even the guys who attacked me, it was in Dublin, and they take street crime very serious there. They caught the guys on, like, street cameras,
Oh, good.
and, yeah, it was a whole thing. They went to court, and I never responded to any of the court messages or anything. I didn't have to be there because they were pressing charges just for, like, the country. And, I felt bad. Like, a part of me was like, "Yeah, they attacked me, they robbed me of literally so much stuff." But how broken and sad does someone have to be robbing someone in the middle of the night? Like, I can get emotional thinking about it. Like, you are way worse than me,
Yeah.
like, inside,
Yeah.
to do something like that. And it made me, like, have compassion for him. Like, it made me picture him, like, not loved as a child, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that breaks my heart." And so I didn't even wanna be involved in it. I'm like, "You guys do your thing. I
Yeah.
don't wanna be involved. I feel bad for this guy."
Yeah. Yeah, with I mean, it's just like karma too. It's just like,
Mhm.
what you that's what I feel when it comes to like revenge or getting back to someone. I'm like, you
Mhm.
know what? Even if it's not me directly saying something to or doing, however you're showing up in the world, you know what?
Yeah.
It's gonna come back. And you're right, it is sad. There are
Mhm.
a lot of unhappy people out there who
Mhm.
feel like, I mean, something even as simple as like writing nasty comments on your Instagram page. Like
Yeah.
that makes me really sad because I'm like, there's a lot of unhappy people here, and
Mhm.
it's not personal. Although sometimes the stuff they say, I feel like I'm like, "Oh, that's mean."
Yeah.
But it makes me sad. I'm like,
It's rooted
"Y
in such insecurity.
insecurity." I feel like they don't have support,
Yeah.
no one to go to, you
Mhm.
know? So it makes me sad, but I'm really sorry that that happened to you. That
Thank
is
you.
terrifying. It is one of my fears. I try not to watch the news too much, but sometimes those stories just
Oh,
pop
yeah.
up.
Even on Instagram, like, the Instagram has, like, become a news source, so
Yes. Yeah,
I'm
like
like,
the
"Oh my gosh, this pregnant woman pushing her baby was robbed, like, in her driveway, like, we're not safe anywhere."
yes, absolutely. Jeez.
Crazy
All
times.
right. Well, thank you so much
Oh
for
my
coming
gosh.
on. I
Of
really enjoyed
course.
chatting with you. If people would like to reach out to you, where's the best place that they could find you?
So my Instagram is at Nicole Marie Ivanov, and then my podcast is at the Dream Check Podcast, and those would be the best two spots to follow along.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.